Hi there, my lovelies. How on earth are you? I hope that you are spiffingly well. It's great to have you here with me in the Holy Shed on a clammy, sunny Sunday here in London. Always a little bit more humid in the city, I find, don't you? But it's lovely. I'm certainly not complaining. Now, should I look a little fragile today? Maybe I'll hide it well, but should I look a little fragile? That's because I am a little fragile because we were partying last night, celebrating our gorgeous friend Emma's 50th in North London. It was amazing, wonderful time. And you know that you're in North London, a certain part of it anyway, when you turn around and find that you're looking straight into the eyes of a well-known TV actor. I won't say who it was. Sufficient to say, definitely wasn't behaving badly. But we had a great time. And then the next thing, that blinking alarm is ringing this morning, isn't it? To remind me that you can't stay in bed a bit longer today, Dave, because you're preaching at St Leonard's Church in Streatham, our church. And preaching, I have to say, on that fabulous passage in Matthew where Jesus says, I didn't come to bring peace on earth, but a sword. And that's the high point. He then goes on to say, well, in Luke's version of it, you've got to hate your family, all of them, if you want to be my follower. Marvellous. Now, there is actually one verse in the midst of a passage packed with nightmare preaching material. One little line that says, you are of more value than many sparrows. And for a moment, just a moment, it felt very tempting to forget the rest and just talk about little birdies and lovey-dovey stuff. But no, being the courageous, maybe crazy boy that I am, I went ahead and did a talk about how to hate your family, which is probably a winning title for a book, isn't it? But you'll be able to listen to it online if you wish. Listen to me pulling rabbits out of hats with that passage. I'll post a link to it on Facebook as soon as it's available. Anyways, over recent weeks in the Holy Shed, I have been talking in a roundabout way about, in my opinion, the completely batty pledge that King Charles made during his coronation ceremony, the pledge to maintain Reformed Protestant religion in this country. As I've said before, I'm pretty sure that he had his fingers metaphorically crossed, if not literally, for that one. I don't think that's how he sees things. I do hope not, anyway. But anyway, part of my meandering journey with this topic has led me to reflect on different religions and different belief systems. And a couple of weeks ago, I think it was, to affirm my own pluralistic approach to faith, to religion, which stands in stark contrast to an exclusivist approach to religion. Religious exclusivism asserts, generally quite dogmatically, that their faith and only theirs is true, that it alone offers the way to know and to connect with God. A pluralist approach, on the other hand, holds that no one can possibly have that kind of certainty, because how could they? And beyond that, pluralists will mostly assume that God is probably revealed to people in all kinds of ways. The faith traditions can exist alongside of each other, each respecting the integrity and diversity of the others without any need to judge their veracity, because none of us, as I say, is in a position to make that judgment. And so pluralists will tend to sort of hold all of that on the one hand, and whilst at the same time remaining fully committed to their own faith. That's certainly my position anyway. So last time in the shed, I tried to paint a much bigger picture, pointing to the 200,000 year history of humans on Earth and how an evolving desire or longing to make sense of the universe led to the emergence of religion in general, and then eventually to the formation of particular religious traditions. So today I'd like to stick another pin right there and open up that thought a bit more. I've talked in, 2 or 3 of my books anyway, about something called spiritual intelligence, which is a relatively new phrase, but I think a very helpful one. For much of the 20th century, intelligence was measured purely on the basis of intellectual dexterity, signified by an IQ score. However, following Howard Gardner's groundbreaking book, which is called Frames of Mind, The Theory of Multiple Intelligence, and that was in the mid-1980s, following that, a host of different kinds of intelligences became recognizable, including physical intelligence, mental, emotional, and yes, spiritual intelligence. A lot of people see spiritual intelligence as central and fundamental because it becomes a source of guidance to all the other intelligences. The first thing to note about it is that spiritual intelligence, SQ for short, spiritual intelligence has no necessary connection to religion. Although it may be channeled through a particular religious tradition, it isn't necessarily something that is connected to religion as such. It neither requires nor does it preclude belief in God. And most importantly, I would say it precedes religious belief. It's something more basic, more fundamental, because it represents that part of us that seeks religious meaning in the first place. It's the thing that started to rustle into life when our ancient ancestors, sitting around fires, gazed up at the heavens and wondered how and why there was something rather than nothing. What was the purpose of it all? So SQ represents the human drive for meaning, for values, for moral judgments and so on, but also it signifies the drive to connect with that which is beyond, that which is infinite, with what some of us call God. But we need to remember that is just a word, it's just a name. So spiritual intelligence drives some of us to name God in this way or that way, or indeed to abandon God talk altogether, because perhaps religion has never been seen or represented to us in a way that makes any sense. And from my observation, despite not believing in God, some humanists and atheists display greater levels of spiritual intelligence than lots of religious people. Indeed, I think having spent my entire life in churches of one sort or another, I've been led to think that some churches are distinctly lacking in SQ, or the ability to nurture SQ, spiritual intelligence, in people in the church. I think that faith is not something primarily up here in our heads, but down here in our guts. I think faith is a matter of that resides in the gut primarily rather than in the head. It's more primitive and grounded than intellectual belief, more instinctual, more visceral, which is why I find it sad that the word faith has now become virtually synonymous with words, with beliefs, dogma and doctrine and creeds. It's come to be about rational assent to certain mental propositions rather than about a deep sense of trust that we sense somewhere in the belly. When I sat once a month for 5 years or more, it may have been, on an interfaith panel discussing issues of faith and morality and religion, we often disagreed on the panel on issues of faith and so on. And we would argue at a rational level, almost always, I have to say, in a very warm, playful spirit. But beneath all of that discussion and argument and difference, I had this deep sense of spiritual camaraderie with these people, of being fellow pilgrims, that we were with kith and kin together at a deeper level than our traditions. There was something beneath all of those things that united us, that beneath all our differences, not only lay a common humanity, but a common instinct and hunger for life in all its fullness. We were united at a gut level, even when divided at the level of the head. And I'll never forget one elderly Muslim man in the audience hugging me over coffee after one of our sessions. And he said, "Brother, I love your spirit and I love your approach to religion." He never said that he agreed with my beliefs and arguments, but that he loved and felt an affinity with my approach, with my spirit, because that represented something more profound than all the words, which we both shared. And in that hug, suddenly we bypassed all the huge differences of belief and ideas that we both represent, and we found this common sense of longing for something more than all of that. So I'd like to go back once again to Paul Tillich, who I've been quoting in recent weeks, because Tillich described faith as a state of being ultimately concerned. I'll say that again. He saw faith as being a state of being ultimately concerned, of being gripped and driven by something that we sense is of utmost importance and which demands our wholehearted attention and commitment. And that something, that ultimate concern, I think is just another way to speak of God. Ultimate concern transcends specific religious traditions with their dogma and their ritual and their practice, but may be sensed and experienced through those traditions, though not always, sadly. In the 1940s, the psychologist Abraham Maslow created his famous pyramid of needs, or pyramid of longing, which looks like this. And so, as you can see, it pictures the hierarchy of needs and longings that humans experience. At the bottom, at the most basic level, we all need our physical well-being to be catered for. We need to survive with food, water and shelter, etc. It's the level of self-preservation. And if that's not in place, then it's very difficult to focus on anything else at all. Then, going up the pyramid, we need security and healthcare. And after that, intimacy, connection and relationship. And then esteem and accomplishment, to feel that we contribute something and that it's recognized. And eventually, we feel the need for self-actualization, to be able to express our potential in a deeper, fuller way, to escape the conformities and expectations of our society or people around us, to be able to become who we truly are. That's what self-actualization means. And that was actually where Maslow originally finished his pyramid. Self-actualization was the pinnacle. But before he died, before he had a chance to write any material about it, he acknowledged a higher level of need or longing, something beyond the ego self, something beyond personal fulfillment and expression, a level of self-transcendence, where fully self-giving love and sacrifice find expression, where we lose our life, as Jesus put it, in order to find it. Faith can be experienced and expressed through all of these levels of our life, right down from the bottom to the top. Faith can be a feature in our lives, but obviously it will manifest in different ways at different stages. But to use Tillich's terminology and understanding, we might say that throughout our life, throughout these various stages, there is a golden thread, the tug within, somewhere deep down in us, toward ultimate concern, or God. At the lower levels of the pyramid, our ultimate concern may express itself in the need to have food on the table, or to find a permanent home, or to find a partner. But even in these concerns, there may be a deeper call going on toward meaning, toward transcendence. Faith is a state of being ultimately concerned. But where the focus of our ultimate concern is, will differ for all kinds of reasons, not least because of the things, the circumstances that we're passing through in our life. Now, it's worth saying that the pyramid of needs or longings, as Maslow saw it, is not a straightforward kind of ascent of linear progress. Now I'm moving from here to here and from here to here and so on. Different circumstances, he thought, move us around. So losing a job, say, or a marriage breakdown, for example, may cause us to slide right down to much more fundamental physical needs. And I'm not sure that any of us lives fully at the top of the scale, as it were. Being ultimately concerned is a state of constantly becoming, constantly opening the depths of our being to the mystery, which is God. Okay, so what I'm talking about is faith today. What I'm talking about is faith in a more generic sense, okay, as something more elemental than the faith expressed in particular religions, or indeed the lack of religion. Faith before faith, if you like. That's what we're talking about. Also, God before God. I mean, God doesn't need to be called God in order to be God, right? I mean, God was still God 13.7 billion years ago when the Big Bang occurred, when there was no one to utter the name God. God was still God over the past 6.5 billion years of Earth's evolution, before even a crow could squawk praise to God, or a whale, spout a cascading, watery hallelujah. And God was still God during the first 200,000 years of human development before any religion existed. Fantastic. God was always there. Whether God was called God, seen to be God, recognized as something that you could call, it doesn't matter. God was still God. And I see a state of being ultimately concerned, or of sensing faith in the belly, as a state of constant longing, which is always satisfied but never satisfied, if that makes sense. Me neither, but I believe it. I believe that, and I experience it that way. The singer Nick Cave puts all of this in a different way. In a lecture at the Vienna Poetry Festival in 1998 entitled The Secret Life of the Love Song, Nick Cave argued that love songs are written in many forms and for a host of reasons, but ultimately, he says, the love song exists to fill the silence between God and us, to decrease the distance between the temporal and the divine. That's a really interesting idea, and he unpacks it in such an interesting way. So he's really saying that, in a way, ultimately, all true love songs are directed at God. They're all kind of filling up that space between us and God. He wrote this. He said, "We all experience within us what the Portuguese call saudade, an inexplicable longing, an unnamed and enigmatic yearning of the soul. And it's this feeling," he says, "that lives in the realms of imagination and inspiration, and is the breeding ground for the sad song, for the love song. Saudade is the desire to be transformed, to be transported from darkness into light, to be touched by the hand of that which is not of this world." I love that. So, you see, basically, he is speaking about the same thing as I have been talking about. He's talking really about faith before faith, God before God, the generic sense of human longing for which, we all feel, we all sense, but which cannot be encompassed, cannot be possessed by any individual or group, cannot ultimately be named. And yet, he, she, it calls us in the depth of our being, regardless of where or when we were born, what faith we were born into, that, as we've already seen, is really rather a random thing anyway, or indeed what faith we have acquired along the way. God is something, a mystery, a being, which, transcends all of our ability or categories to try to speak of what that is. And so I think that there's a bit to think about there, isn't there? Really, quite a bit. But let me stress in closing, lest anyone hear this and get the wrong impression, I am comfortably Christian. This is how I know God, through the incredible revelation of God in Jesus Christ. For me, Jesus is the human face of God. I don't need to rubbish anyone else's faith in order to affirm that for me, that is how I know God, that the beauty, majesty, and truth of my own faith stands for itself. I don't need to rubbish any other faith in order to affirm that that's how it is. I'm pretty blinking convinced down in my belly that this which I experience in Christianity is God. But I'm equally convinced that what I name God and experience as God is far greater than what I or anyone else or any faith tradition experiences or can speak of. God is beyond God, as Paul Tillich put it. And if you want to get that just clear, the second God is in inverted. God is beyond God, which is our namings of God. Nick Cave says all true love songs exist to fill the silence between God and us. I'd like to say that all longing is ultimately a longing for God, even when it's misguided. There's a rather breathtaking quote attributed to G.K. Chesterton, which says that every man who knocks on the door of a brothel is looking for God. That's an extraordinary statement, and I've pondered it many times. And I understand what it is trying to say, that even when we are shooting in the wrong direction, that the longing within us is ultimately a longing for God. So what I'm going to give you now is a visual prayer. It's a little video that I put together earlier of various kinds of longing pictured. Anonymous prayers, maybe, in each of these pictures. But, just open your heart as you watch and, allow yourself to touch your own longing, even if you can't actually name it. Music and images can touch us, I think, at a level that, you know, words sometimes can't get anywhere near. That's how I find it anyway. So, look, guys, I think if you get what I've been on about today and in the past few sheds, you'll know why it is that I think a promise to maintain Protestant Reformed religion is so utterly small-minded a thing to contemplate when we look at the greatness of how God works in people's lives. I think that probably, I don't know what a king or indeed any political leadership can really do to help us on this journey, but I think it's whatever it is, it's not about kind of continually plugging down this one road and saying this is the faith that describes who we are as a country, because actually that isn't really true anymore, is it? I think that what can be done is a climate can be created where faiths can flourish, where ultimate concern can be sensed in all kinds of different ways, and I'm sure that's what King Charles would wish to contribute to, and I hope that he does. So there we are. I think we're going to have a toast, aren't we? Really, for reasons mentioned earlier, as much as anything. You can see that I've got water today. You may have wine, you may have whiskey, you may have a cup of tea or whatever. But I invite you to just join me very briefly in a toast to longings that each in their way enable us to touch that which is beyond the mystery we call God. A toast to faith, hope and love flourishing in our country and in our world. To life. L'chaim. Okay, well, if you like what I'm on about here in the shed and you want to support us, you can do so. You can buy us a coffee by just following the link that's on your screen now. It is also always at the top of posts on the Holy Shed Facebook page. And as I always say, we are so deeply grateful to all of you who contribute in this way and other ways to help make the Holy Shed what it is. You're part of the whole thing, and we've cherished the fact that even though we don't meet up in the same space, not too often anyway, that we're part of something special and precious. So thank you very much. And I'm going to put up the prayer which I used last week because it still remains appropriate. Somehow, I don't think you are bothered what name we give you when we attempt to label the unlabelable. I suspect you have greater things on your divine mind, if mind is something even worth contemplating where you are concerned. Yahweh, Allah, Krishna, Waguru, God, or the far shore, as Buddhists say. Words just don't hack it. You are the vivacious presence, saturating all things with wonder. Landscapes, oceans and wild meadows, trees, croaking frogs, and a skylark's frivolous aria of delight. May we find peace in knowing that you are indeed utterly ours and utterly everyone else's. The breath we share, the longing in our soul for goodness and love, the beauty, truth and wisdom we all aspire to know. You are the ultimate concern of all our best desire and yearning. You are God beyond God. Amen. Well, there we are. That is just about it. I'll see you again next time, and I hope that you have a great week this week, and be kind. Be kind to yourself. Be kind to people around you. Be kind to the world. Stay human. and I'll see you soon. And I'm going to leave you actually by putting on that music and those pictures once again. So if you want to keep on watching, you can do so. All right. See you soon, guys.